Imagine a world engulfed by water, cities swallowed whole, mountains disappearing beneath the waves, the end of everything we know. Now imagine this isn't just one story, but hundreds. Not from one culture, but from almost every corner of the ancient world. From the sun-baked plains of ancient Mesopotamia to the banks of the Yellow River, from the Isles of Greece to the deserts of Egypt, one tale echoes through time and space. A great flood that nearly wiped out humanity. You're likely familiar with one version of the story, the biblical account of Noah's Ark. But how is this possible? How could cultures separated by vast deserts, towering mountains, and thousands of years all tell such similar stories? Is it mere coincidence? A shared memory of a catastrophic event? Or something deeper buried in the very foundations of human consciousness? We'll explore ancient myths, examine geological evidence, and ask the big questions. Are these tales merely legends or echoes of a long-forgotten truth? And if a great flood really did shape our past, what might it mean for our understanding of human history? This is the story about the Great Flood, echoes of a drowned world. Water. It's the source of life, vital to every civilization throughout history. But according to ancient tales, it was also once the bringer of near total destruction. Our journey begins in ancient Mesopotamia, in what is now modern-day Iraq and parts of Syria. Here, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, we find one of the oldest written flood stories in the world, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This epic tale was inscribed on clay tablets around 2100 BCE, discovered in the ruins of the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh. It tells us the tale of Utnapishtim and the Great Flood. Here's a translation of what the god Ea says to Utnap: "O man of Shuruppak, son of Uber-Tutu, tear down your house and build a boat. Abandon possessions and look for life. Despise worldly goods and save your soul alive. Aboard the boat, take thou the seed of all living things." Utnapishtim builds his boat, loads it with animals, and survives the deluge. When the waters recede, he releases birds to find dry land. Sound familiar? That's because it bears a striking resemblance to another famous flood story. Fast forward to around 500 BCE, in the region we now know as Israel. Here we find the story of Noah's Ark in the Hebrew Bible. The book of Genesis, chapters 6 to 9, tells us, "And God said unto Noah, Make thee an ark of gopher wood. And behold, I, even I, do bring a flood of waters upon the earth, to destroy all flesh, wherein is the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die." Like Utnapishtim, Noah builds an ark, saves his family and pairs of animals, and survives a world-destroying flood. The similarities are undeniable. But is this just a coincidence, or is there a deeper connection? Now, let's hop over to ancient Greece. Between 700 and 500 BCE, we encounter the myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha. This story is preserved in various ancient Greek texts, including Ovid's Metamorphoses. Ovid writes, "Jupiter, recalling the fateful time when fire should take the place of flood and burn the world, set that aside for future ages, and resolved to pour down rain from all the sky and destroy mankind beneath the waves." In this Hellenic version, Zeus floods the earth. Deucalion, warned by his father Prometheus, builds a chest or ark. He and his wife Pyrrha ride out the flood and become the progenitors of a new human race. How did this story, so similar to those from Mesopotamia and the Bible, emerge in Greece? Was there a common source, or did these tales evolve independently? Our next stop is ancient India. Between 300 BCE and 300 CE, Hindu texts like the Shatapatha Brahmana and the Matsya Purana tell us the story of Manu and the fish. The Shatapatha Brahmana recounts, "There lived in ancient time a holy man called Manu, who, by penances and prayers, had won the favor of the Lord of Heaven. One day they brought him water for ablution, when, as he washed his hands, a little fish appeared and spoke in human accents thus, 'Take care of me, and I will be your savior.' This fish, an avatar of the god Vishnu, warns Manu of an impending flood. Manu builds a boat, ties it to the fish's horn, and is guided to safety as the waters rise. Once again, we see the themes of divine warning, a chosen survivor, and a great flood. What could explain these recurring elements across such vast distances? Moving east to ancient China, specifically the Yellow River region, we find a flood story dating back to around 2000 BCE. The tale of Gunyu and the Great Flood is recorded in various ancient Chinese texts, including the Classic of History, or Shu Jing. Unlike the other myths, this isn't about escaping the waters, but taming them. The Shu Jing states, "The inundating waters seem to assail the heavens, and in their vast extent, embrace the mountains and overtop the hills, so that people were bewildered and overwhelmed." Yo the Great spends years digging river channels and dredging, working tirelessly to control the floodwaters, threatening to destroy everything. His efforts lead to the founding of China's first dynasty, the Xia. While different in its focus, this myth still speaks of a catastrophic flood that threatens all of humanity. Could this reflect a real historical event that was remembered differently across cultures? In ancient Egypt, we find a unique flood myth in the Book of the Heavenly Cow. This text, found in several royal tombs, including that of Tutankhamun, dates back to around 1550 to 1070 BCE. Unlike many flood myths, this one doesn't involve a boat or ark. The story goes, Ra, the sun god, had grown old and weak. Humanity, noticing this, began to plot against him. Ra, angered by this betrayal, sent his daughter Hathor, in the form of Sekhmet, to destroy mankind. She began a bloodthirsty rampage, and Ra, fearing she would kill everyone, devised a plan. He flooded the fields with beer dyed red to resemble blood. Sekhmet, drinking this, became intoxicated and fell asleep, saving the remainder of humanity. While not a global flood, this myth still features divine retribution through a form of flood, showcasing a unique Egyptian twist on the flood narrative. Why might the Egyptians, living along the life-giving Nile, have a different perspective on floods compared to other cultures? Crossing the Atlantic, we find flood myths in the Americas. The Maya civilization, which flourished between 250 and 900 CE in what's now southern Mexico, Guatemala, and parts of Belize, had their own flood story. Their sacred book, the Popol Vuh, tells of gods who decide to destroy their imperfect human creations. The Popol Vuh recounts, "There was a great flood, and a great resin fell from the sky. The face of the earth was darkened, and a black rain began to fall by day and by night. There was heard a great noise above their heads as if produced by fire. Then were men seen running, pushing each other, filled with despair." In this Mayan account, the flood is part of a cycle of destruction and recreation, showcasing their cyclical view of time and history. How could a culture so far removed from the old world have developed such a similar narrative? Let's summarize the striking similarities we've observed. Almost all these stories feature a catastrophic flood that destroys most of humanity. Many include a divine or supernatural cause for the flood, often as punishment for human wickedness. Most myths feature a chosen individual or family who survives the flood. Many stories include the construction of a boat or ark as a means of survival. Several myths mention the preservation of animals during the flood. After the flood, many stories describe a process of renewal or rebirth for humanity. These stories span over 3,000 years and come from cultures that had no possible contact with each other. How could cultures separated by oceans and thousands of years tell such similar stories? Is it shared history, collective memory, or something more profound about the human experience? Let's explore some potential explanations for this global phenomenon. As we do, ask yourself, which of these theories seems most plausible to you? Leave a comment below, I'll read it. One theory suggests that real geological events could be the source of our flood myths. These events fall into two categories: gradual changes and sudden catastrophes. Let's start with the gradual changes. Around 11,700 years ago, the last ice age ended, causing dramatic worldwide changes. As vast ice sheets melted, enormous amounts of water were released into the oceans. Over several thousand years, sea levels rose by about 120 meters. This global change reshaped coastlines around the world. Imagine the impact on ancient peoples. Areas once dry land slowly disappeared beneath the waves. The Persian Gulf, parts of India's coast, and large regions of Southeast Asia were all once inhabitable land. In Europe, a region called Doggerland once connected Britain to the continent. As waters rose, generations of people were forced to migrate inland. Could their stories of lost homelands have evolved into tales of a great flood? But there's a problem with this theory. Could such a gradual change really account for the catastrophic floods in our myths? This brings us to the second category: sudden, catastrophic floods. These events might better explain the dramatic nature of flood myths. For example, around 6,400 BCE, a massive glacial lake called Lake Agassiz in North America suddenly drained into the ocean. This could have caused widespread coastal flooding in a matter of days or weeks. Another example is the Black Sea deluge hypothesis. Around 5,600 BCE, rising Mediterranean waters may have breached a natural dam, rapidly flooding the Black Sea basin. This catastrophic event could have displaced early farming communities across Europe and the Middle East. Could one of these disasters be the source of all these stories? Or did many local floods contribute to a wider narrative? There's one more piece to this geological puzzle. Ancient people often found seashells and marine fossils high in the mountains. We now know this is due to plate tectonics pushing ancient seabeds upward. But for our ancestors, it was proof that water once covered even the highest peaks. How might this observation have shaped their understanding of the world's history? Could it have reinforced beliefs in a great, world-covering flood? As we can see, geology offers intriguing possibilities for the origins of flood myths. But can it fully explain the similarities in these stories across cultures? Let's explore some other theories. Another theory proposes a cosmic origin. Some researchers suggest that a comet or asteroid impact in the ocean could have caused worldwide flooding and climate disruption. While controversial, this theory could explain the global nature of flood myths. But is there any evidence of such a cataclysmic event in our planet's history? A simpler explanation is based on universal human experiences. Floods are common natural disasters experienced by cultures worldwide. Rivers like the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, and Yellow River all have regular flood cycles. Could these myths be exaggerated accounts of real, localized flooding events? If so, why did they grow to such epic proportions? Cultural diffusion is another possibility. As early humans migrated across the ancient world, they may have carried their stories with them. Stories, like genes, can be passed down through generations and across cultures. As people migrated, they likely brought their myths with them, adapting them to new environments. But can this alone account for the remarkable similarities we see in flood myths across the globe? Some scholars suggest that flood myths might arise from shared human psychological experiences. Humans share certain psychological archetypes and fears. The idea of a world-cleansing flood might represent a universal human concept of divine punishment and redemption, or a collective fear of the destructive power of nature. But why would this particular fear manifest so consistently across cultures? There's also a more esoteric theory based on the concept of universal or collective consciousness. This idea, popularized by psychiatrist Carl Jung, suggests that all humans share a deep layer of the unconscious mind that contains archetypes and universal symbols. Some extend this to propose a universal field of consciousness that all beings can tap into. Proponents of this theory might argue that the prevalence of flood myths across cultures is due to a shared access to this universal consciousness, rather than shared historical experiences or cultural diffusion. Could our myths be echoes of a shared cosmic memory? Finally, there's a more controversial theory that has gained traction in some circles. Some propose that these remarkably similar flood myths were given to ancient humans by extraterrestrial visitors or time travelers. Proponents argue that the similarities between flood myths across cultures are too striking to be coincidental, or the result of cultural diffusion. They suggest that advanced beings, whether aliens or future humans, might have warned our ancestors about a global catastrophe, or perhaps even caused one. This theory has captured the imagination of many, offering an explanation for both the similarities in flood myths and other mysterious aspects of ancient cultures. Supporters point to ancient artwork and texts that they interpret as depictions of advanced technology or beings. As we can see, there's no single simple answer to why flood myths are so prevalent across ancient cultures. The truth likely lies in a combination of factors: real geological events, universal human experiences, cultural exchange, and the power of storytelling. But based on the evidence we've explored, it seems most probable that a combination of actual flooding events, both gradual and catastrophic, combined with the human tendency to create and share stories, gave rise to these pervasive myths. As these stories spread through migration and trade, they were adapted to local cultures, taking on new details while retaining their core narrative. What's clear is that these stories have played a crucial role in shaping human culture and understanding. They speak to our shared experiences, our fears, and our hopes for renewal and second chances. And in a world where climate change is causing sea levels to rise and extreme weather events to become more frequent, these ancient stories may hold warnings for our future. They remind us of the power of nature and the fragility of human civilization. But perhaps more importantly, they remind us of human resilience. In every flood myth, humanity survives. We rebuild, we carry on. As we face modern environmental challenges, these ancient tales might offer not just warnings, but hope. The great flood myths remind us of our shared humanity, our resilience in the face of disaster, and our enduring hope for a better tomorrow. As we face the environmental challenges of our time, perhaps these ancient tales can inspire us to come together, to respect the power of nature, and to build a more sustainable future for all. If you like this video, please push the like button and subscribe to the channel.